On this episode of How to Make Dinner, we're talking about the forgotten bean. I don't know if it's really been forgotten, but I feel like the old kidney bean deserves a little bit more credit than it gets. It is such a good bean. And I think the reason it doesn't get as much time in the limelight is because of its name. I can't think of any other reason. I mean, look at these things. They're more tender and creamy than a chickpea, but they're not as creamy and sort of delicate and, dare I say, mushy as like a white cannellini bean. They're firm and they're really hardy. They really hold up to long cooking. You can cook them forever and they seem to never, fall apart and turn to mush. And they're just really versatile. So today I'm making 3 recipes with kidney beans, and I think they're all really awesome, and I hope you like them too. The first recipe I'm making with kidney beans is a hot kidney bean dip. This is one of those like game night party things, although I've never really been a sports person, but I can totally get behind the idea of crowding around a TV with friends and piling into a big thing of hot dip. And I love 7-layer dip, and this reminds me of that, even though it's not exactly that. So I have a pan here. This could be a non-stick pan or a cast iron pan or a stainless steel pan. It doesn't really matter. I'm basically just going to chuck everything into a pan, cook it for a minute, and then blend it up. And it doesn't matter how you cut the things because it's all going in the blender. And then I've got a couple cloves of garlic. If you don't like chopping garlic, you could definitely use garlic powder. I've been a major garlic powder enthusiast lately because it's just so easy. And it reminds me of my mom. She's a garlic powder enthusiast too. And then I'm gonna throw in kind of like a heaped tablespoon of tomato paste. I kind of wish I had one of those tubes right now. I'm crying. So the whole thing with the goggles and like the tricks, like the fridge trick and the goggles trick, like, yeah, they might help, but really it's about the onion. You get strong onions and you get not so strong onions, and the strong onions are doozies and they'll make you cry. Back to the dip. So I've got my garlic and my onion in a pan. I'm gonna drop in kind of like a heaped tablespoon of tomato paste and about a teaspoon of cumin, ground cumin, and about a tablespoon of chili powder. Notice I'm just doing this the super lazy way of just putting it all in the pan. I'm just gonna heat this up for a few minutes all together, and then I'm gonna add the beans in. Just a little splash of oil to get things started. I'm not super concerned about getting these onions really well cooked. I'm more just wanting to take the absolute rawness out of them. That's why I added it all at once with the tomato paste and stuff. But tomato paste and spices toasting while the onions soften slightly is just perfect. And then once they have softened slightly after like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm gonna add in the kidney beans. And just kind of warm this whole mixture through. So I'm just gonna use my Vitamix here, which I haven't done on the show for a while, mostly because it's so big. I'm just gonna put about half a cup of water in the bottom. It's just hot water from the kettle. And then I'll dump this mixture in. Try not to splash myself too much. And you can of course use a food processor or whatever blender you have. that was loud. Everybody's awake now. So I don't know about you, but I kind of love dips when they're really, really smooth. So I like my hummus smooth. I like my kidney bean dip smooth. And this is really nice and smooth. So that's pretty cool. Give it a little taste. Oh, it's perfect. The right amount of salt and everything. All that's left to do is dump this bean dip mixture into a oven-proof dish. And you want to try and find a dish that is the right size for this amount. I will put the whole recipe in the description box, by the way. I used canned beans for all these recipes too. I often use dried and just cook them in the Instant Pot, but canned is also very convenient. Just gonna smooth it out a bit. And then sprinkle this whole thing with some cheese. Not a ton of cheese, just some. I don't know. As much cheese as you want. And then I've got an oven preheating to 450, cranked right up. Maybe this is a lot of cheese. I don't know. Maybe I'll just use it all. Why not? And then I'm gonna throw this in the oven for about 15 minutes, just until the cheese is really bubbly. The beans are already hot, but if you had this in the fridge for some reason, you might wanna cook it for a bit longer at this point, just to heat the bean mixture through. 15 minutes if they're hot, maybe more like 20, 25 minutes if they're not. Okay, great. Okay, while the bean dip is cooking, I'm gonna tell you about a couple other recipes that I made earlier today. So the first one is this really simple, like the simplest soup in the world. All it is a big onion and a couple sticks of celery and a couple carrots chucked into the Instant Pot with about a cup of barley. This is pearl barley I'm using. And whenever you're using barley, it is beneficial to rinse it ahead of time because it's quite starchy on the outside, but I skipped that step here. And a large can of kidney beans went in there. And then a tablespoon each of paprika, garlic powder, oregano, and salt, and a few bay leaves, and about 2 liters of water. And then I set that to cook in the Instant Pot for 15 minutes and it came out so perfect. It's so good. So I will say, when you're cooking barley for soups, if you like your soup to be crystal clear and have like a nice clear broth that isn't cloudy, and if you don't want your barley to like thicken the whole thing up so that it's quite thick and stewy, you know, the next day, I would suggest that you cook your barley separate and then add it to the soup after. But I'm kind of feeling this whole like starchy, kind of really thick, hearty vibe lately. So I've been cooking my barley and rice and things like that directly into the soup. To each their own, do whatever suits your mood, but I like it this way. And I also just love that you can just chuck it all in the Instant Pot and walk away. I've always been a huge advocate for sauteing onions and garlic and things ahead of time before you add the liquid, because that's technically how I was taught, and that's technically, you know, better. But somehow with the Instant Pot, like, you can just chuck everything in and it's just good. It just works. So I like that about it. The next recipe I want to talk about is this really nice kidney bean and broccoli salad. So I just love broccoli salads in general. I'm a huge fan. I find that they're just what I want to eat, especially when it's like a lunchtime and maybe I'm working and I'm busy and I just don't have time. Broccoli salads hold up so well in the fridge, so you can just bust them out and they're ready to go. They're also perfect for potluck. So whenever we're able to socialize with people again, this will be a great one. So all I did was chop up about half of a red onion really finely, and then a stick of celery and about half of a crown of broccoli, and then added in a huge can of really well rinsed kidney beans, about a teaspoon of salt, a handful of raisins, a handful of cashews, about a 6-second pour of olive oil, and then about the same of sherry vinegar. I like my salads to be quite tangy, so you can adjust that amount if you'd like. I also added a little drizzle of honey, and then I tossed the whole thing really, really well. And this is just perfect. This is gonna be our thing that lives in the fridge for the next few days and keeps us both pretty happy and satisfied. If you're not into raisins, which I know a lot of people aren't, I do highly recommend that you put some kind of fruit in here, just because it's so nice to have that kind of like crunchy broccoli, the creamy beans, and then the sweet bite of fruit. So you could put dried cranberries in here, or chopped up apples or grapes or any dried fruit you want, and it'll be great. So good. And this is just gonna get better over the next few days as it sits in the fridge. Hooray for kidney beans. Okay, so there's the dip in all its glory. So the dip is hot and bubbly and the cheese is melty and a little bit brown. So all I wanna do now is just kind of load it up with other stuff. So I've got some red onion, and I know that, again, it's not for everybody, but it is for me. I might not use this all. Some tomato. Amazingly, I found a pretty good looking tomato in my grocery store the other day, even though it's December. This knife needs to be sharpened, obviously. Oh yeah. So it's kind of, you see the 7-layer dip vibe we're going for? A bit of cilantro. I think keeping a bunch of this stuff on the side is also a good idea, just to make it extra loaded. And then if you have iceberg lettuce, it's perfect for this, but I only have romaine, so I'm using the innermost part of the romaine because I want it to be super crunchy. Something about crunchy cold lettuce on top of beans like this, oh, I just love it. It reminds me of the taco kits that we used to get when we were a kid, like the old El Paso ones, you know, like the hard shell tacos. Okay, and then what else? Maybe a blob of my homemade yogurt in lieu of sour cream. Obviously you could use sour cream if you wanted. Oopsie. And then a squeeze of lime. I'm getting all excited here. Look at that. I'm into this in a big way. So good. Those are all the kidney bean recipes I have for you today. I hope you like this episode, and I hope you feel inspired to cook with kidney beans more often, because they're pretty awesome. And maybe we could even brainstorm a little rebrand together. Maybe we can come up with a better name for them. Let me know if you make any of these things, and I will see you next week.